Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this public hearing of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises. I'm thankful for everyone who could be here, given the lovely weather we had this morning and the traffic to get here, but most of us got here. I'd like to state that the purpose of this meeting is to examine the efficiency and effectiveness of the Educational Facilities Company Limited in managing the construction and repair of government and government-assisted schools, and to explore what might be some of the possible solutions to challenges being faced by the company. The role of this committee is firstly to examine the issues which arose based on EFCL's written responses to the committee's questions, and secondly, to aid EFCL in improving its operations, resulting in a more efficient and effective organization. For your information, this meeting is being broadcast live on Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can participate by sending comments relating to today's engagement with the EFCL via email to parl101@ttparliament.org or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament or on Twitter @ttparliament. I would like now to invite the official of the EFCL to introduce themselves, and then the other members representatives from the other entities, please introduce yourselves.
A pleasant good morning. My name is Dennis Cox. I'm the Acting General Manager, Chief Financial Officer of EFCL. My colleague, the Director Pumel, he stepped out a while to retrieve his glasses.
Good morning. My name is Angela Sinosui-Jeve. I'm the Acting Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shobha Jaisir, Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Education.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Phillips, Acting Permanent Secretary, Investment Division, Ministry of Finance.
Good morning. My name is Suresh Dan, Business Analyst from Ministry of Finance.
Morning. My name is Lester Herbert. I'm the Director of Central Audit Committee, Investments Division, Ministry of Finance.
Thank you very much. I would like to acknowledge that the committee did receive the submissions from EFCL. I want to thank you for your written responses, which were very comprehensive. I would like now to ask the members of this committee to introduce themselves, beginning with the member on my extreme right.
Good morning. My name is Adrian Lyons, member of committee.
Morning, Fazal Karim, member.
Morning, Alison Bash, member.
Morning, Wade Mark, member.
Morning, Brigadier General Ansel Antoine, Member of Parliament, member.
Good morning, and I'm David Small. I'm the chairman of this committee. Before we move on, the committee would like to share some views with the public of Trinidad and Tobago about what is to transpire here today. So I'd like to say good morning to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Your committee is here trying to do the work that it has been mandated to do as per the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. Whatever the merits of the issues swirling in the public domain about any entity, the committee has a process for its work and has an acute focus on dealing with situations where accountability and responsibility are being separated at the highest level in the administration of several state entities. This committee is here to help and assist entities with their various challenges. Without a doubt, many of these challenges that these entities face occur either because of the absence of or what we describe as creative avoidance of systems for holding the entity's board and management to account. This committee will continue to be very vigorous in extracting relevant information to inform our recommendations as the first step in an intervention process to protect the interests of the taxpayers from the wanton greed and abuse of state funds and resources by despicable and criminal-minded persons. To be clear, this committee is not a judge and jury, but be warned that attempts to obfuscate or otherwise hinder the progress of our work will be met with the stiffest resistance, as we are resolved to put the interests of the taxpayers of this country before that of all others. Today we have one member of staff from the EFCL, and I think he's indicated that one other director is here. The committee was informed only this morning that officially that the chairman of the company has decided to move on, and that also the vice chairman has found it fit to not be present. He has personal reasons. In a situation where the chairman has demitted office, I think a reasonable person would have expected that the vice chairman would have found every reason to be here to represent the company. However, it seems that the vice chairman has something more pressing to do than to account to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and that the committee takes serious umbrage to. You have a responsibility. When you accept the appointment, you accept the responsibility. If you can't want the responsibility, there's options available to you to do something else. Based on the information that we have here, we have other members of the board who've chosen not to be here this morning, and I'm saying that deliberately. Anthony Bisnat, Jeffrey Francis, Indu Sharma, Christopher Brathwaite, Dean Burgeon, and Stephen Samlal Singh. These persons are members of the board of the EFCL. They would have all have been aware of this meeting being scheduled, yet somehow, miraculously, no one is able to turn up here today to answer to this committee. Other than, I understand, Mr. Purmel is here and has just stepped out to tend to a matter. The committee takes this as a significant sign of disrespect, and it will not be tolerated. It will absolutely not be tolerated. I want to draw the public's attention to the standing orders of the Senate here, and I want to draw members' attention to Standing Order 101 in the Senate, 101, Section 12 and 13, and 102, forgive me, 102, Section 12, and in particular Section 13. And this is where the committee has the power to issue a summons to make people appear. And I want people to be aware of how serious this committee is in doing its work. I want to quote, Section 13A states that we can issue a summons, and this person must state the time and place at which it is to be complied with by the person to whom it is addressed. And it allows for the committee to issue a summons which will be delivered by the Marshal of the Parliament to ensure that the persons turn up. This is an option available to the committee, and given the gross disrespect demonstrated for the committee this morning by the other members of the board, it is something that is under active consideration. Because it is unfortunate that it is in the public domain that the members of the board have been summoned to a meeting elsewhere. So it will be very interesting that they couldn't turn up here this morning, but may find themselves in another place this afternoon. And that will only deepen the disrespect. They are thumbing their noses at the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and this committee is extremely dissatisfied by the response. Thought better, given the current situation of the company, that someone with parties would have turned up here to explain and give a full accounting of what is going on with the company. So I want to share with you that the committee here, as you can see, the committee is almost fully staffed. We only have, I think, one member who's overseas. And you have members of parliament, people who are holding serious senior positions, including myself. And yet we have made the time to be here. Yet somehow, Christopher Brathwaite, Anthony Bisnat, Jeffrey Francis, Indu Sharma, Ricardo Vasquez, Clyde Purmel, Mr. Purmel is here, Dean Burgeon, and Steve Samlal Singh could not be here. Not one of them could be here. Let's see who turns up at the appointment this afternoon at 2 o'clock, because it will just cement in our minds that they have decided to try to put things in place to stymie the work of this committee. It is their plan. They could run, but they can't hide. So that and I'm putting it on the record now for the member of the board who is here, that this committee will be having a subsequent hearing at which we will demand that every available board member attend. And there will be no room for any wiggle room, because we're not tolerating this level of disrespect. So thank you very much for being with the chairman, because the chairman this matter has been discussed by the committee, and the chairman is fully authorized to make take this position, that under normal circumstances, we would expect at least the chairman or the vice chair to be in a meeting. The chairman, as we understand, has demitted office, and the vice chair has chosen to not be here. And that's how we read it. And then only this morning we received phone calls regarding other issues. Yeah. So, members, I want to now ask, I now revert to the set agenda for this meeting, after having laid the views of the committee very bare on this matter. And that, let's be clear, the committee intends to pursue as far as possible the objective of this inquiry, and to the extent that we don't get through all that we want, we will have to call EFCL again for a second meeting within a very short space of time to answer to the questions that this committee has. We have many questions, and we would like a full accounting of those questions. And I just want to also, as I am on the floor, the issue of availability of documentation is an issue that I have treated with on more than one occasion. I have had conversation and questions with the sitting permanent secretary, acting permanent secretary, Ministry of Finance about the ability of companies to tell us that they are not submitting documents and quoting all sorts of reasons. That is not going to be on. And I'm going to deal that substantively again, but let me quote. The powers of this committee, the select committee, require by order that a summons be issued to any person to attend before the committee, and 2, to produce any papers or records in your possession. EFCL does not have the ability to tell the committee that you can't submit a document. Once you have it, you supply it. That is your, it seems that people don't understand how the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago works. And to the extent that anybody has any discussion with that, the committee here is here to help you. But don't write and tell us you're not submitting it. That is absolutely not going to be tolerated. I've had to deal with this on more than one occasion, and I'm dealing with it again substantively again. Entities have zero ability to tell the committee what it can submit and what it can't. You submit everything the committee requests. If there's an issue that you for competitive or confidentiality, various reasons, you can ask the committee to consider this in camera. That is a normal process. We will have a private meeting to deal with the issue. But you don't have the ability to say you're not submitting a document. And I want that to be abundantly clear. And I keep having to do this because somehow or the other, attorneys are earning a living in these entities and advising the management that all sorts of legal issues why they can't submit documentation. And that this committee is not standing for it. So we expect, and I will deal with the issue that I just described, but I want to make it as a general statement that everybody understands the page that we're on. So now I'd like to invite the available board member from the, or whoever from the acting general manager to give a few opening remarks on EFCL so we can start this inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to give you a brief overview of EFCL. Education Facilities Company Limited was established in 2005 as a special purpose state enterprise. Its primary activities really is for the construction of schools, repairs and maintenance of schools, the outfitting of schools. Also, it's involved in what we call the textbook rental program. EFCL does the procurement of the textbook. In terms of the organization structure, EFCL, there's a board of directors. Then we have, a 9-member board. At the date of submission of the report, we had 9 members. We have the chairman had resigned on Friday last. So there are now 8 members in the board. In terms of the management comprises of an acting general manager. We have an two assistant general manager. One position is vacant, assistant manager technical, assistant manager support. The assistant manager support has resigned last month. We also have several managers at the supervisory level and a complement of 74 members of staff. EFCL has been undergoing a number of challenges. One of those challenges I would say would be in terms of the completion of the audited financial statement, which is something that the Ministry of Finance has been requesting of EFCL over the past few years. The last audited financial statement is the audited financial statement for the period ended September 30th, 2013. Currently, the auditor, PKF, they are engaged in finalizing the 2014 and 2015 audited financial statement. In terms of financial statement 2016, the board has, in keeping with best practice, has rotated the auditor, And we have Audit Solution as the new auditor who will be conducting the audits for 2016 and 2017.
Mr. Cox, we just wanted some introductory remarks to start, and you will have full opportunity to respond to us as we go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So don't you worry, we have lots of time. And this is a very warm committee, so we try to make sure that we make everybody feel welcome and focus on the delivery of the work at hand. But always remember, we're very rigorous in our work. I would like to now give the floor to Member Karim. Member Karim, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in view of your opening remarks, normally at these meetings, the experience is that we would have members of the board, chairman or vice chairman, and also senior members of the organization. I would like to direct this question to the Acting Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Nasri Gervais. I read in the newspaper yesterday where you indicated that you were directed by the Minister of Education to invite or summon persons to a meeting at 2 o'clock today at the Ministry of Education, which comprises all members of the board as well as senior personnel from the EFCL senior staff. And the question really is, can you tell us, tell the committee, what was your response or what response you received? In other words, who has consented or who have consented to attend that meeting at 2 o'clock this afternoon?
Good morning again. As at this morning at 8 o'clock, I had not received any information that persons would not be attending. It was a mandatory meeting, so I'm expecting that all members would be attending. I don't know if by the time I reach back in the office, I would get any apologies. But as at 8 o'clock this morning, I had no apologies.
Normally, whenever meetings are being called, for example, even of us, we have to give individual responses. And I wanted to get a sense from you as to who are the persons. If you are saying that you have not had any information that no one will not be, can you tell us so far who you expect to be in attendance or who have agreed? I am sure they would have responded and said, well, I am coming, I'm not coming, I'm unable to come. So if you can tell us who are the persons, their names and their portfolios, who will be attending that 2 p.m. meeting this afternoon.
I don't have that information either, as at 8 o'clock this morning. No one called to say that they're coming or they are not coming. But as I said, it's a mandatory meeting and we expect them all to attend.
Madam Acting Permanent Secretary, did you issue formal correspondence to the members of the board of EFCL to attend that meeting? And have you, as you said, up to this time, well, first of all, when was that issued? And could you make a copy of that letter available to this committee by you to these board members? When was it issued? What time? And you're telling us as of 8 a.m. this morning, you had not received any excuses or apologies. When was that letter issued?
The letter was issued mid-afternoon. I can't say exactly. On Friday, sorry. Friday, the 2nd of June. It was sent to the vice chairman of the board. And as I said, I have not received any yeas or nays since then.
Would you be kind enough to
yes,
make a copy of that letter available to the chairman?
Yes, that can happen. I'll send it later today.
And Mr. Chairman, may I follow up on Mrs. Lisa Phillips, who is the Permanent Secretary Acting? Ministry of Finance, you represent corporation sole interests, or I so verily believe. And we know the role of corporation sole as it relates to these state enterprises. Could you explain the conduct, behavior, the attitude of these board members, with the exception of Mr. Pullman and the former chairman, as to their non-appearance at this morning's meeting? Could you offer any explanation, and could you advise this committee what action your ministry as permanent secretary will be taking for the disrespect and literal contempt shown by those members towards this committee? Mrs. Phillips, could you explain to us what action you intend to take?
Good morning. The members of the board, in particular the chairman, reports to the corporation sole or the Minister of Finance. So the permanent secretary does not really have, the members of the board doesn't fall under the purview of the permanent secretary. However, I can have discussions with the Minister of Finance, letting him know the status, what has happened, and action, and depending on what he says, action will be taken.
But you would be aware, through the investments division, that this company called the EFCL has been making news like the President of the United States every day. And not good news. They have been making they have been receiving very negative news because of their conduct, their behavior, alleged behavior and misconduct. Could you advise this committee, either through you or Mr. Herbert, in light of all those statements, particularly appearing in the Trinidad and Tobago Express newspaper, what measures have been taken by the investments division to act or to inquire into these matters and to take the relevant and necessary action to address them once it turns out to be true? What measures, what action have been taken by the ministry?
The ministry has mandated an audit to be conducted by the Central Audit Committee into the procurement, human resource management, and governance practices of EFCL. This audit is expected to start this morning.
Do you have any idea what is the time frame because of the serious nature of some of these allegations? Do you have any idea what time frame would be given to this audit committee, and is it also properly staffed to execute with some degree of swiftness this particular mandate?
We do currently have a shortage of staff at the Central Audit. The only available staff we have is one member who has been sent out. The audit is expected to be completed
In about 4 weeks.
in about 4 weeks.
How many members make up the Central Audit Committee, you said? Only how many members are there?
We have 6 audit analysts and 1 director at this time.
And you expect within a 4-week period that audit would have been completed?
Yes.
When was this audit ordered?
This audit was requested maybe about a month ago.
A month ago?
Mm-hmm.
I will take.
Sorry, let me correct that. It was requested in January, but staff was not available to attend.
The audit into the activities of EFCL would have been ordered since January.
Yes.
And one staff was not available, and that audit is commencing, or has commenced, as of today.
Yes.
But what was responsible because of the absence of one staff member from January to now, and we are now getting that audit started only today, and you are proposing or suggesting that it may take at least 4 weeks to complete. Why this gap between January to now, given all that has taken place between that period?
May I allow Mr. Herbert to respond to that?
Yeah, sure.
The audit was requested by the minister in January of 2017. We assigned a member of staff to conduct the audit, and that member of staff subsequently resigned. We made arrangements for another member of staff to go on the audit, to start the audit in March of this year, March or April of this year. Due to a conflicting audit that was requested and given priority, that member of staff could not conduct the audit. So this is the first available member of staff that we have had, and we have put her on the audit to start the audit from today.
Thank you, Mr. Herbert. Mr. Chairman, again, could Mrs. Lisa Phillips indicate to this committee what are the terms of reference of this Central Audit Committee as it begins its work into this EFCL? The reason why I'm asking this is that I have a letter before me dated the 3rd of November 2016 addressed to one Mrs. Suzette Leachy, and it is signed by the General Manager who is here with us in his capacity as both General Manager and Chief Financial Officer, which I will address very shortly to him. But I wanted to ask you if you could share with this committee, what is the mandate or terms of reference of this central audit, given the serious allegations that have been made against this particular entity?
Well, first of all, it's a systems audit that's being conducted. It will deal with procurement practices, human resource management practices, that includes recruitment, dismissal, that kind of thing, as well as governance issues, how the board operates, and that kind of thing.
May I interject? Madam Permanent Secretary, could you please provide the committee with a copy of the terms of reference with respect to this specific audit that has been conducted, so that the committee can have an understanding of what the entity, the audit is about, what they plan to look at? Yes, and I just want to take the opportunity for a quick follow-up. Could you confirm that a meeting, as noted by Senator Mark earlier, a meeting was requested between the management of EFCL and the Corporation Souls Office? Could you confirm that that meeting actually occurred?
The meeting between Mrs. Leachy and...
Yes.
I was on vacation at that time, so I'm not sure, but I do believe it did occur.
But that's important for us because, in Madam Permanent Secretary, in your experience as a Permanent Secretary, we know each other from my previous life. But would you, and I don't want to put you on the spot, is it unusual for a management of a company to report to corporations so that they're having challenges in the way in which the board is operating? Is this something you've seen before? Or is this something that is relatively unusual?
Well, since I've been here at Investments, which is about 1 year now, we have had incidences where management of the company would have complained or want to see corporation sold with respect to issues with the board.
So this is not necessarily an unusual occurrence?
No.
You've seen it before?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, you've seen it before, I would like to understand what is the game plan? How, if if the ministry, the cabinet appoints directors, and then but there's a substantive management group, and the management group, and this is where people's understanding of the separation about corporate governance. Boards of directors are there to guide, to oversee the operations of management and to deal with policy issues. They're not supposed to be involved in the day-to-day management. And I am sure with I haven't experienced it personally myself. I know that the corporation sole, the investments division in particular, has a seminar to sensitize directors to their role. They do a seminar and indicate to directors the limits of your capabilities, and you have to allow the management to run the business. But if that is happening, and yet you are saying that this is not the first instance of management essentially saying they're having challenges with the board interfering in the way in which the company is being run, what is the strategy of the Ministry of Finance to treat that? Because it just can't continue. I've put you in a spot. Okay, Madam Permanent Secretary. I'm not going to press you on that. I'll leave it as a comment. As a comment for something for the Ministry to consider. If, as you've indicated, this is not the first instance where a management has communicated with Investments Division that we are trying to run the company, but there seems to be interference, for want of a better word, by the board in the day-to-day operations of the business, then there has to be a strategy developed by Investment Division to manage that. Because that is completely wrong. I myself, having served nearly 10 years as a director on a state board, I would be in the office 1 day a month or 2 days a month for a few hours. So that I am struggling to understand that if you have this experience, that you have not by now tried to figure out how to manage it or how to treat with it. That's all I'm saying. So I want to Senator Mark, are you complete?
I just wanted to ask Mr. Purmel, seeing that he's the only board director, member of the board of directors, I should say, here with us today. Mr. Purmel, I understand that the company has expended a huge amount of scarce financial resources, approximately $3 million, to conduct forensic audits at the EFCL. Would you be kind enough to tell us, first of all, if my number is right, that you have expended over $3 million in expenditure to conduct these forensic audits? Could you also inform this committee how many forensic audits were conducted? Could you also advise us why only PricewaterhouseCoopers was recruited to conduct these particular audits? And would you be also kind enough to let us know some of the results of these audits and or investigations? Would you be kind enough to provide us with that information?
Senator Mark, I am afraid that I'm not able to do all that you have requested.
Could you put on the mic, please?
Yeah. Senator Mark, I am afraid that I will be unable to do all that you have requested, for the simple reason that Mr. Purmel was only appointed a director February the 16th. Since then, I've probably attended about 3 meetings, and I'm still grappling with trying to understand what is going on at EFCL, and therefore I will be unable to give you the type of answer that you require.
Well, maybe I can ask the permanent secretary, because or Mr. Herbert, because I don't believe that they could be conducting these forensic audits at the expenditure level that have been advised, over $3 million, or maybe even the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Education. How many audits, forensic audits, have been conducted thus far? As I said, I don't have to repeat myself. I've made myself very clear. So maybe the permanent secretary acting in the Ministry of Education can advise this committee, and maybe Mrs. Phillip and Mr. Herbert can clarify even further. So, Madam Permanent Secretary, could you advise us on this matter?
Senator Mark, unfortunately, at this point in time, I don't have that information. but I can seek to get it and provide it as quickly as possible.
Madam Permanent Secretary, you would be in a position?
Unfortunately, we don't have the information as well.
Well,
I am astonished.
what about Mr. Herbert?
The company, although they submit reports to us, they do not give every bit of information. We were not aware that they have commissioned the audits, and we have not received any reports of the audits that were completed.
Could the chairman interject here? Mr. Cox, I see I see Mr. Pumel has indicated that these things were prior to his appointment. Mr. Cox, does the company have in its possession these audit reports?
Chairman, I came in August 2016, and I was made aware that several forensic audits were being undertaken by the company. Okay.
My question is, are you aware whether the company has these audit reports in its possession?
I don't have a copy of any of the forensic reports.
So let me ask a different question, because Senator Marks asked a perfectly pertinent. Or according to the Senator Marks' information, several $1 million of taxpayers' money was spent on audit reports, and yet you, as the general manager, can't account for whether they even exist. Is that what you're saying?
I have no access to the forensic. However, I can confirm that payments were made towards forensic audits.
So what are we paying for? Well, this continues to be an interesting session because things are happening at the EFCL, and then all of a sudden is either amnesia or something has set in. Nobody seems to know anything. So that I am getting more and more concerned as time goes along. But I intend to press on. So, Mr. Cox, no reflection on you. You are the holder of the office, and you're indicating to this committee that you don't even know where but you can confirm that the money was paid.
Yes, some money was paid.
You want to tell this committee how much, what quantum of monies was paid? Could you remember that, Mr. Cox?
I don't know the exact amount, but roughly 2.9, thereabout.
Could you provide details on the payments and what they were specifically for to this committee, please?
I can do that.
We'll appreciate that. Senator Mark, I will now move to MP Karam.
Yes, no problem.
MP Karam.
I just wanted to ask with respect to audits. From your information, your knowledge, well, I want to ask two questions on this. Were there other audits that were conducted prior to this last audit that you just indicated the sum of 2.9 million may have been paid? And if there were other audits, when were these audits conducted? What were they initiated for? What caused them to commence audits of that nature? Whether those reports were completed, paid for, and what was done about these audits. But before you answer the question, the acting permanent secretary indicated that the invitation letter went out to members of the board and senior staff on the afternoon of Friday. We have Mr. Purmel, a director here, and I'd like to ask Mr. Purmel, when did he get his letter of invitation? At what time did he get his letter of invitation for the meeting at 2 p.m. today with the ministry and the minister? And did he respond to that invitation, and to whom did he respond? So one is to Mr. Pumel, and the other one has to be with the audit, and I'll ask subsequent questions.
Okay, I received it on. It was not it was a copy of a letter sent by the secretary of EFCL. Okay, it was sent via email. I received mine on, I would say, Friday night or something like that, via email.
And did you respond to that email invitation?
I did not respond because I saw a very important word there, mandatory. Therefore, that means that I had virtually no option in terms of attendance.
So in other words, just to again belabor the mandatory that you will be attending this afternoon's meeting at 2 p.m.
Yes, I will be attending this afternoon at 2 p.m.
Okay. With respect to the question on the audit, I had asked a question on the audits.
Yes, through the Chair. There was some, I think, 2 audits that were conducted with respect to staff issues. It had to do with the procurement of certain transaction, I think concerning Five Rivers government. An audit was conducted.
Secondary, Inspector. No, Five Rivers government, Five Rivers secondary.
Five Rivers Secondary School. Okay, the other audit was involved. I think I don't have these specifics, but it had to do with another staff member, the executive manager.
But just as a follow-up, as the acting person for finance, the manager of finance, when you have to make payments, whether it's an interim payment or a final payment for these reports, would you not have had the details as to what you are paying for or what you're engaging in? And if that is so, can you tell us what that Five Rivers secondary audit was about? And if there are any other audits, what were the nature of those audits? Whether they were fully completed, whether they were fully paid for, what were the findings? In other words, was any action taken on the basis of the audited statements?
Okay, in terms of the forensic audit, which really preceded my arrival at the company, in this document that was submitted to the Joint Select Committee, we have, some accompanying documentation, because the forensic audit, what I understood, it led to the termination of 5 members of the executive staff at that point in time, in terms of the outcome of the audit. The audit with respect to the Five Rivers had to do with the procurement procedure and whether there were breaches in the tender policy with respect to the members of staff that were engaged in that process in the procurement of, I think it was air-conditioned facilities for the Five Rivers Secondary School.
So as far as you are aware, were there breaches to the tender processes?
That is a bit complicated, very complicated.
I would not like Mr. Cox to opine on whether there's a breach.
Okay, well, can I ask whether you communicated to anyone or any agency or any other ministry or any persons in those ministries with respect to your concerns about tender procedures?
With respect to those audits, the Ministry of Finance at that time, they came in to do the Central Audit Committee. They came in to look at those same specific audits. So there was no need for me to involve any of the other agencies, per se the Ministry of Education, as to what was taking place or what has taken place, with respect to this audit. With respect to your other question, you asked in terms of how we do payment. The audit, we received the invoice from the company, and it stated the information. I looked at the terms of reference that were issued by the board. Well, I shouldn't say the board, by the company EFCL. And the check was processed on the basis of those documentation. It was approved by the corporate secretary, the acting corporate secretary, who would be the liaison between the board and the general management. So on that basis, the payments were processed.
Can you give us an idea as to what the TRR would have been?
I can't remember offhand, but I can submit that document in writing.
You can provide that to us in writing.
Sure.
With respect to the Ministry of Finance, could you indicate whether there were previous audits, and as I indicated, as to what would have caused or triggered those audits, and what were the consequences of the audit reports being received?
I believe we have done probably 3 audits at EFCL. In those audits, we did find that there were some breaches in the procedures, which we notified the board of in terms of the breaches that we discovered, and I believe corrective actions were taken. I know one report was from 2011, 2012, so I don't have all the details of it, but I can forward those reports to you.
The committee will be very pleased to receive same from you. I have a question for Mr. Cox, and I don't want to put you in trouble, Mr. Cox, but I want your most direct answer. You indicated earlier that you joined EFCL, if I'm correct, in July 2016.
Sorry, August 2016.
August 2016.
August 15th.
August 15, 2016.
Yeah.
Senator Mark has referenced a letter dated sometime in November 2016, signed by you, indicating particular issues. I am trying to understand, if you joined a company in August, what would have led you to be able to pen the letter in the period from August to November, a very short period, for somebody who's new to the company to have all of these concerns? Based on that time, and it seems that it's something particularly egregious. But I don't like to guess. So in your most direct style, help the committee to understand that you were appointed to the position in August 2016, yet a mere 3.5 months later, you penned a letter to the corporation sole advising of challenges with the board. That's a very short period of time. So I wanted to help us with the history, because there's a gap somewhere and the committee is trying to fill the gap. If you have a challenge sharing that information with the committee on camera, we can arrange to have you provide that to us otherwise. But at least I would like for you to characterize what led you to that stage.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to be brief and to the point. I was appointed Chief Financial Officer at EFCL, August 2015. Subsequent to that, I think it was October 2016, I was, promoted to acting general manager. And during that time, all the managers reported to me in terms of the functional areas. And in the reporting, they informed me of some of the challenges that they had, in particular with certain members of the board. That, I observed with my, because certain members of the board were regularly at the compound and the premises. And
describe regularly.
24 hours, almost every day.
Almost every day?
Yeah, and there were some practices which I, as general manager, objected to, because the board was having meetings every evening with the staff. They have to report every evening of what they did for the day, where they went, which school they visited, and to give an update, a daily status update.
Daily status update?
Yeah, which I felt as general manager, you usurping my authority. I mean, I was acting, but, and the information that were coming to me in my capacity as general manager, I felt that, they were crossing the line.
I will stop you there. I'm agreeing with you.
Thanks.
That if your reporting is accurate, it's absolutely not allowed for that to happen. Because that's the reason you have, in the corporate governance model that I'm aware of, directors don't get involved in the day-to-day business of the company. That is why you have a management in place. So that I will await to see how that pans out. I don't want to put you in any more trouble, but at least you've given us a flavor for what the challenge is. And I'm happy that it's on the public record. And to the extent that this committee can afford you the opportunity to share with us any deeper information, we can arrange for that. But you see, the problems we are having is that we want direct information. The committee can't function necessarily only from the press reports. So I appreciate your candor and your directness. It is much appreciated. I have a request from MP Leons for the floor.
Chair, thank you. In your submission, you indicated that your major challenge in delivering to the ministry would have been funding. My question is, based on the budget, there would have been some planning as to deliverables and projects. How is that process carried out? How is money requested? And how do you receive money with respect to the budget allocation and your projected plan of action with respect to the budget.
Okay, in terms of the processes, in terms of how we go about our daily operation, we will get instructions from the ministry through the permanent secretary as to what school repair or what school construction or what school in terms of outfitting or textbook program. We'll get that information from the ministry. The technical team, EFCL, will do a costing process and pricing and report it back to the ministry as to give an estimate as to what would be the cost of the particular project. I use the term project for the job. All right, the ministry would agree in most cases and apply what we call a plus or minus contingency to the work and give us the approval to go ahead. In other words, to go for tender. EFCL, through the procurement, we would look at, a series of what we call, from our approved list of contractors, we would make offer, sorry, not offer, we would invite submissions from these approved list of contractors who are equipped to do the job, who has the capacity based on our documentation to perform the task. And they would do the site visit and they would submit their bids. All right?
The question I'm asking is, after that process is followed, right, I'm going to assume then that monies would be released to pay for these particular services.
Yeah, just for correction, I would assume that the allocation, when we get approval from the ministry, it is based on the approved budget, the national budget, the allocation from the Ministry of Education, and based on that, they would approve projects to meet with their allocation. Okay, and based on that, we would proceed with the contractor to carry on the respective tasks. Upon completion of the task, the contractor now would submit his invoice, and we would do what we call IPC, either interim performance payment certificate or a final performance certificate with all the documentation, work certified, and we would process it in-house. We look at the letters of offer, which we call the LOA, and we match the letter of offer with the submission, the invoice or the invoices submitted by the contractor with all relevant documentation. And we would bundle that and send it to the Ministry of Education for payment, along with an invoice for our fees.
Right, so my question is, after that process is carried out, then the ministry would release funds.
Yeah, that is how the process should work. But given the financial state of the economy, allocation tend to be a challenge. In other words, we will still be waiting for payment. Right. Work done in 2016, we may be still waiting for payment. So it has to do with the Ministry of Finance, how the money could be, the cash flow.
Let me be more specific with the question. Has there ever been a time or an incident where money would have been released for payment for the planned projects that the ministry would have directed, and it would have been directed elsewhere?
No, I'm not aware. I'm not aware of those payments being made in advance. You mean you're talking about payments made in advance for the project?
No. Let me ask again. Has there ever been a situation where, because based on the explanation you gave, based on the financial constraints, the ministry would have indicated these particular projects would have been priority?
Yeah.
And you would have gone through that entire process. My question is, have there ever been a situation where the ministry would have released that funding after that process is done, and monies would have been directed elsewhere instead of specific to those projects?
We were told, well, I'm told that prior to prior to this administration, that there were incidents where monies were paid to contractor A by the ministry and EFCL paid contractor B. All right? But I have no documentary evidence at this point in time.
And I would like you to protect you again, Mr. Cox. Anything you say, you should be able to reference documentary. So I hear,
yeah.
But we were trying to get to the facts here at this committee. MP Leon, you have anything further? Yes. Okay.
One other question. I'm just going based on the main challenges that you indicated. So finance and release of funding would have been one. One of your other challenge was the negative publicity in the public domain based on misrepresentation. Can you explain what this misrepresentation is?
Right, those challenges really from the perspective of the contractor relationship, contractor-EFCL relationship. What we have realized in recent time, contractors were very reluctant to do work for EFCL based on the fact that their payments are not short in terms of the indefinite wait or indeterminate period waiting to receive their funding. Secondly, negative publicity out there creates, a negative environment, in terms of transacting or relating with our contractors. They indicated to us that, they were scared to do work with the EFCL on the basis of, I should use the word, let me use the accounting term, solvency of the company. In other words, the company may no longer exist based on these negative matters in the public domain.
And in your view, this is a misrepresentation that the contractors would take, that they would have inordinate length of time to be paid. This is a misrepresentation.
No, that is not a misrepresentation. The misrepresentation has to be the information in the press, in the public domain. Some of the information in the public domain may not be what it really is. So in other words, there are truth and half-truths out there. And those are creating different perspectives, the perspective of the contractor. It's created a certain amount of fear in terms of, or mistrust, in terms of how they treat with EFCL.
Thank you very much. The chair would like to intervene here. Mr. Pumel, I noted earlier indicated that several matters predated your appointment to the board regarding the various engagements of PwC. But based on information available in the public, in the past 2 weeks or so or less, the company engaged PwC to provide a report regarding an issue around the ICT manager. Based on information in the public domain, it seems that an interim report was presented to the board, I believe, last Friday. What I want to understand is what was the driver for engaging PwC? What was the reason that the company decided, or the board decided, to engage PwC? You would have been in the meeting, so I'm just trying to understand why. What was the basis for engaging PwC?
Actually, the board members had the belief that information from board meetings, that those were actually flowing freely to the management and to other workers of the company, and that was causing some problems in terms of actually running the company as such.
Right. So what were you hoping to achieve by? I'm trying. Why did you hire
come up
PwC?
with whether it was fact or fiction, or whether there was any grounds for that belief in terms of information getting back. And what was done is that a member from Price Waterhouse came in and actually receive the computer and so on from the particular person, the IT manager, and they went through that computer.
Can I ask a different question? Does EFCL have a whistleblower policy in place?
I'm not aware.
You're not aware. Mr. Cox, excuse me, are you aware whether EFCL has a whistleblower policy in place?
Chairman, I'm also not aware of that, of any policy.
Astonishing. Forgive me. So here's what I'm getting at. Could you give us an idea, Mr. Pumel? What was the course of this engagement? Because what you're saying that there were suspected leaks of information from the company's boardroom and other places to other places. And on that basis, the company engaged PwC to try to find out whether or not that was really happening or not. Am I correct?
Yes.
Good. So I'm just trying to understand what was the estimated cost for that service?
At this time, because that was only when last board meeting, which was about a week ago. Yeah. It was about a week ago. I cannot give you the cost as yet.
So PwC delivered an interim report and they did it for free?
I'm not saying that. I am saying that as to date, I cannot give you the cost because that happened at the last board meeting. The information may have been, the request may have been supplied shortly after. So therefore, I cannot really, in all honesty, give you the cost that you're asking for.
Well, here's what I'm driving at. You should be aware, as a member of the board, and I suppose everybody at the table there, that the sitting government is pursuing a whistleblower legislation. And it's incumbent upon all state entities to make sure that they have a whistleblower policy in place. So that the issues that the board found troubling could have been easily handled if they had a whistleblower policy in place, or would have been easier to manage if you had a policy in place to allow people who wish to flag issues an avenue to flag those issues. And rather than engage PwC with taxpayers' money to find out if it was happening, this is something that could have been managed internally. That is my respectful view. And I think that is something that the board and the management have to look at going forward very seriously to avoid unnecessary spending of taxpayers' money. I have no problem with PwC per se, but I am concerned when every time there's an issue where there's in my respectful view, there's a management fix. The management can do their job, the board can do their job and fix the problem, rather than be paying the consultants in this time of scarce resources. So I don't expect you, I don't need a response, but the chair is sharing with you his view on the matter, that this is something that is a pattern that has seemed to be par for the course at EFCL and other entities, when it doesn't seem that the management knows what to do, or the board certainly is clueless, and we need to fix those things, and those things are, in my respectful view, easy fixes. Easy fixes. Before I give the floor to Senator Bash, I want to reference back to the Acting Permanent Secretary, Sinasui Gervais. Forgive me, my glasses, I didn't read your name incorrectly, I apologize. In his response to my question a short while ago, Mr. Cox indicated that he had some challenges. I'm aware that the Corporation Sole Investment Division team is aware that a meeting occurred, and they were probably aware of the genesis of or whatever the concerns were. As the line ministry, were you aware of these issues?
Start off by saying you did say my name correctly, thank you. In November, I got the census was the 3rd of November. We have 2 permanent secretaries in the Ministry of Education, and in November I was not the accounting officer until later. At the 3rd I wasn't. I became accounting officer around the 7th. So I can say I wasn't aware. I cannot speak for my colleague who would have been the accounting officer at the time.
But subsequent to that?
No, I was not aware that
so
there was
even
a
today,
meeting.
so this is
I
news?
know, I found out recently.
Recently, okay.
Yeah, but anywhere around November, I was not aware of that meeting with PS Leach.
Well, I'm going further, Madam Permanent Secretary. I want to elicit a response from you. If the management, now that you're aware that the management has made a particular approach to the Corporation Sole, is this something that concerns you or not?
It concerns me, yes. However, I was made aware of it while I was on vacation. I resumed duty on Thursday. So I am now in a position to be very concerned and to look into it further.
That's where I'm going, Madam Permanent Secretary. Now that you have the information, because you're the line, and you're the line agency. The general manager has indicated he's having some issues, and I would like to think that the line ministry is there to support the management team and try to, let's see how we can work the problem out and sort it out in cooperation with Corporation Sol, of course.
Of course.
I just want to make sure that we're all aligned.
Yes, we are.
It's all about alignment.
It's all about alignment, yes. Just that, as I said, now I'm in a better position, having resumed, to look into that further. And yes, the Ministry of Education is there to work with EFCL to make sure we are all aligned.
That this committee takes those statements very, very seriously.
We are
very, very
committed
seriously.
to make sure that we are aligned.
And for the members of the public who probably don't understand what corporate governance, it is absolutely not allowed. It is absolutely not allowed. So that if these statements that have been made are even remotely accurate, then some action has to be taken. Yeah. Because there's no way that members of the board should be sitting having daily meetings with staff of the entity, bypassing the general manager. That's not on. So I have several requests. Because I have 4 requests. You want to do a follow-up, and then after Brigadier Antoine, I will allow MP Senator Bash. Brigadier Antoine, retire.
Yes, to Mr. Cox, the Managing Director. After you raise these concerns about the Board of Directors of ECL with the Permanent Secretary, what was the outcome of the meeting with the Permanent Secretary? Did you see any changes in the activities of the Board of Directors subsequent to the concern that were raised by you? And were there any follow-up meetings? After you raised your concern with peers, was there a meeting with the Corporation Sol? Was there a meeting with the Chairman of the Board or the Board of Directors based on your concern that you raised with the Permanent Secretary?
Okay, through the Chair.
Yes, and be direct, Mr. Cox. Be direct.
Yes, the Ministry of Finance did follow up on my concern. There was, in fact, an intervention. I was told that the Minister of Education, the Minister of Finance, and the Minister of Planning convened a meeting with the board, the chairman of the board, to respond to, my
concerns.
My concerns. Okay. Subsequent to the meeting with the ministers, I had discussion with my board, the chairman, and other members of the board in terms of forging a way forward. Okay. And the facts, the behavior, we saw a change in behavior in terms of members of the board no longer, came on a regular basis and interacted with staff. So they interacted either through me or through the corporate sec. Well, more with the corporate sec, acting corporate secretary, rather than holding meeting with members of staff and the management team. So I did see a change.
All right. Senator Bash, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair.
Chidi Chair, can I just one additional point? Subsequent to that, also in January, the Ministry of Finance conducted a corporate governance seminar, which the board were invited, and myself, the management team and the board were invited, and we made contribution to that. Thank you.
Somebody still didn't get a memo. They went to the seminar, but they're not here. So the management and the board they're still, in my respectful view, some remedial training is needed for the members of the board who are absent today, because I'm going to hammer that, along with all the other members of the management who couldn't find themselves here today. So that I suspect Ministry of Finance may have to run a special seminar for the management and the board of EFCL, so that the level of disrespect demonstrated to the people of Trinidad and Tobago this morning will not be repeated. Senator Bash, you have the floor.
In an Express article dated May 30th, 2017, it is alleged that the ICT manager, along with 10 other employees, were dismissed. Is this true?
Just for correction, Chair, the IT manager was put in suspension. Based as Mr. Pumela indicated, the PwC report. The 8 other members of staff, their contract were nearing the end, and in some cases their contract had expired, and they were given letters stating that there would be no renewals of their contracts. So the word fired, I don't think it's, in this context, it's not appropriate. They were not renewed, the contract was not renewed.
But for what reasons? And how do you think the recent dismissals or sending home people is affecting employee morale?
Up to this point, definitely employee morale affected severely. I think how it was done, there was a situation where a memo went to the press.
Could you help us with how it was done? You flagged it, so I am putting you on the spot. But when you say especially how it was done, because we operate in a space where the environment is now where the job market is tough. And if you have to release people from employment, it should be as gentle as possible. So that is my respectful remit to you. So I want you to help us with what you mean when you say how it was done.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As Acting General Manager, I had discussion with the HR committee of the board in terms of how we should treat with a dwindling revenue stream in terms of the number of jobs that we were getting at the time. And I indicated, it's in public media, that the number of jobs moved from 118 schools to 20 schools to be built within the fiscal period. And the economy we're in an adverse economic situation right now. The macro-environmental factors indicate that EFCL were under severe economic strain in terms of carrying the workforce, its present workforce. So there was a need to reduce the size of the workforce. However, the suggestion of management was to look at people's appraisal in terms of the need analysis, and to decide how we're going to fees the staff. We held a meeting with the Minister of the Minister of Education, and the Minister of Education indicated that he would look at other options rather than sending people home. The management team, with that in mind, we reconfigure in terms of how we would approach the board or proposal, given the fact that the Minister of Education had given us some assurance that he would treat with the matter of funding. Because at that point in time, there was about 55 million due in terms of fees to us, which should be sufficient enough to carry the staff for another year or two. However, the submission was made to the board, and on that day itself, a decision was made to send letters to the staff at the board meeting, issued to staff on that day. I wasn't wrong at the time, but I was told that letters were issued to 8 members of staff, including a letter of suspension of the IT manager. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I'm going to ask 2 more questions.
Certainly, press on, Senator Back.
All right. Recent media publications strongly suggest that there is a level of discord between the board members of EFCL and the management team and possibly staff. Can you let us know what steps are being taken to resolve the underlying issues?
So, Mr. Cox, I will Senator Bash, you put Mr. Cox on the spot.
Can I
Follow to the other question.
I have another question. Yeah. I think I'll put him on the spot again, so. Okay, the committee has noted in recent publications again, where media publication quoted verbatim correspondences between the EFCL and the Office of the Parliament. What is being done to address the apparent leak that's taken place within the organization?
That situation is really unfortunate. I did apologize, and I would publicly apologize to the Joint Committee, Select Committee, Secretariat, for those breaches.
And I want to put on the public record, as chairman of this committee, I was perturbed that on a particular night, now I'm normally up late, I'm reading the online version of a newspaper, and I'm seeing a letter that's supposed to come to me. I don't see till the next day, but the letter is verbatim already in the newspaper the night before. So that, let's just say that the members of this committee were perturbed. Because when I checked the newspaper story, I'm saying, interesting, that looks like a letter they're writing to us. But I don't get it here, delivered to my box until the following morning. So that we understand there's issues and there's challenges, but that is not something that the committee would like to see repeated. Yeah? And I know you're trying to fix it, but I would suggest that going the route of PwC is not the way to fix it. That is not the way to fix those problems. That is what I would respectfully suggest.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Yeah?
Because I think it really can be fixed.
I now yield the floor to Senator Mark, and then after MP Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Purmel, I know that you're new February of this year. I also am aware that the EFCL's school construction mandate has been significantly decreased. But when I looked at this voluminous document of 499 pages, which was submitted to the committee, and I looked at your establishment on page 1, but I'm referring specifically to page 3 of your submission. Could you advise, or Mr. Cox could advise, why is the technical services division of the company so heavily staffed in comparison to other core business units of your operations? Given the fact that, as you have said, Mr. Cox, you have moved from 118 schools to just about 20 in fiscal 2016-2017. I'm just trying to understand, why is it so heavily staffed and you're not involved in any construction activity?
Yeah, through the Chair. Senator Mark, to answer your question, while the construction aspect of EFCL's mandates is being restricted or constricted, we have what we call the repairs and maintenance program, which is really ongoing. And in the repairs and maintenance program, you also have what we call emergency jobs taking place there, and that is ongoing. And you find a team of officers assigned to each education district. So you have 7 teams of officers assigned, technical officers that is, assigned to each education district. You'll have a senior project manager, clerk of works, assigned to each one of these education districts. And you find that although the work is reduced in terms of construction, there are a lot of work in terms of repairs and maintenance taking place almost on a daily basis.
But you find that in number 34, I checked, is too much given your circumstances, or you think it is adequate to deal with the maintenance? May I start again?
Yeah.
Do you believe that the 34 persons under the technical services section, do you consider that too large at this time, given the fact that you're focusing on repairs and maintenance, or whether you would say that it is quite appropriate and adequate, given the emergencies that you mentioned that would come up from time to time, dealing with repairs and maintenance of schools?
Yes, from my discussion with the technical managers, they have the view, and that the current complement is adequate to deal with the the repairs and maintenance aspect of the jobs. As you mentioned, the sort of skewed relationship between the technical and the support services.
Yes.
The accounting, HR, and even IT, there are some challenges in terms of numbers.
Yes.
So what we have been looking at is to redeploy staff to treat with to sort of support the other functional areas, especially in terms of the accounting, where there's a backlog of work to be done, and the accounting really hinges on the technical work coming from the technical department. So in terms of sourcing documents from the technical department so that we can process payments, we would need some, shifting of staff from the technical to the accounting.
Okay.
In terms of, the clerical aspect of things.
Could you?
Could I interject? I like the trend where Senator Mark is going, because we have seen in this committee where entities are operating and then the scope of their mandate is reduced. But for some reason, they continue to maintain the same staffing levels to the point where it becomes, to the point where it's just not sustainable. So I think where Senator Mark is going is that you've indicated that your scope of work has dramatically reduced. Dramatically. And when you look at the amount of technical personnel here, I certainly don't get a sense that all of those personnel are required. Now, I'm not advocating the removal of persons, but somewhere in the entity, there must be a revalidation of what it is we're doing. If we needed this amount of people to manage 100 projects, if we're managing 1/5 of the amount of projects, some basic logic would say, listen, we need to, and if we decide, listen, we may not meet them in that area, we may repurpose them to other areas. But I think where Senator Mark is, when he's looking at the number, it looks like a large number. And by your accounting, the scope of your services, the amount of work that is in front of you has dramatically reduced by 80%. So if your workload has reduced by 80%, there's no way that you can sustain. If it stays like that, the current structure that you have is way too heavy. So at least I think inside of your operation, there needs to be a strategic relook. And if this trend continues, perhaps there may be other things that you may need to do. I think this is where Senator Mark is going, and I want to make sure that point gets across very, very clearly. Senator Mark, you have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Cox and maybe Mr. Purmel could also come in, and the Permanent Secretary. Are you aware that in the last 6 to 8 months, some chosen members of staff look like it have favoritism and discrimination at that company? Some chosen members of staff receive fabulous increases in their salaries, while others, they don't get the same benefit at a time when the company and the country is experiencing very difficult economic circumstances, and at a time when your company is undergoing severe stresses and strains. Could you verify, confirm, or deny whether in the last 6 to 8 months you have had some increases in salaries for some members of staff?
Through the Chair, yes, Senator Mark, we had in fact given what we call bonus increases to 3 members of staff based on their contribution made in what we call the payout to contractors. There was a special project based on a cabinet directive to make payment from what we call the Abercrombie Fund of $221 million fund that was to be redirected to the payment of contractors in arrears. And we did in fact decide to do it in-house and had a project team, basically people from the accounting department. We contracted temporary persons, and those members of staff from the old structure, they assisted, and we compensated them through the board by giving them increases. The level of the accounting assistant.
You want to tell us what kind of increases they received?
I
Or you want to put that in, you have that information?
can put that in writing. I can put it in writing.
All right, may I also ask, Mr. Chairman, again, the Express has been the lead newspapers in the country, doing expose after expose of what is taking place at this particular company. In an Express report dated May the 14th, I recall, it was reported, and I want to know if the allegation made by the Express is true, that multiple contracts were awarded to various entities under the same parent company, Junior Sami Group of Companies. Now, I would like to know if this is true. And if this is true, what was the reason for this occurrence? And is the claim in the same article that payments for Junior Sami contractors were expedited? Is this true? Now, these are allegations that have been made in a newspaper that has gone all over the world. We are seeking clarification from somebody, either Mr. Permel, yourself, or the Permanent Secretary on this matter. Could you, I don't want to compromise you either, but I think this, you see, taxpayers' money have no color. The only color I know is the national colors of Trinidad and Tobago, the flag. And we are here to protect the monies of the taxpayers. So we want to know if you have phantom companies being created and they are coming and just only receiving 10 million, 15 million, 50 million under different names, but it's the same entity that is involved. And what is worse, is being fast-tracked. That is what is being alleged. So could you help us in any way to clarify this matter?
Through the Chair, Senator Mark, in terms of the phantom companies, I'm really not aware of phantom companies. In terms of the group of the Junior Sami group of companies, I'm not aware of all the subsidiaries or all the entities that comprise the Junior Sami group of companies. However, I can tell you that Junior Sami did work for EFCL and did receive payment from EFCL within this fiscal year.
Can I ask a further question? The Chairman. The conflict of interest, a little conflict of interest here. At the start of board meetings, do members declare whether they have any conflict of interest? Mr. Permel, you are a board member. On items on the agenda, you know, when a meeting starts, if my family has a company and the company is bidding, and that is before the board, my responsibility is to declare that I have an interest here, and either leave the meeting or not take part in the decision. What I'm asking is whether there is a policy as it relates to the declaration of conflict of interest at the board level, and how is it done? At the start of the meeting, or do these members go directly to the chairman of the board and say, Chairman, I have a conflict of interest? Or is it done at the board level? At the board level. At the board level. Can you tell us whether a member, a director, declared a conflict of interest insofar as Junior Sami is concerned, but was involved in the very decision to invite a company called Elgin? Now, all this was revealed in the Express, that you had this conflict of interest I know the name of the director, you know. I wouldn't call it. But you should know that there is a member of the board of directors, PS, in the Ministry of Education, and PS in the Ministry of Finance. There is a member currently watching this program at the board of EFCL right now. That member is very closely related to this company, Junior Sammy, and he sits in a meeting and he does not declare his interest. And he sits in a meeting, takes a decision at another level of the board and award a contract to the very company under a name called Elgin. I am asking.
Allegedly, Senator Mark.
Allegedly. But these are matters, no, I'm saying that these things come out in the Express. These are matters come. I am not making these statements, you know. And I'm glad the chairman corrected me. These are allegations that are being made that we need to clarify because the public is involved and taxpayers' monies are involved. So we would like to know whether these allegations that have been made are true or false, and whether there's a conflict of interest policy. When Mr. Purmel has indicated that members of the board declare their interest from the start or at the start of the meeting. But do we have what happens, Madam Permanent Secretary, in a situation, or Mrs. Lisa Phillips, where you have this conflict taking place in a company, like it's a family affair? It is alleged.
Yeah, well, as you said, the director is supposed to recuse himself from participating in the decisions.
And if he does not?
Well, it should be reported to the corporation. So
I hope that the corporate secretary or the general manager would do their duty and report this matter, because we are aware.
Again, Madam Permanent Secretary, these are the things that are before the committee, and they're very troubling. And because these issues are very troubling, and the directors have chosen not to be here, the depth to which we're troubled is magnified. It is magnified. These things are troubling the committee and the directors of the company, aside from the good Mr. Purnell, whose mom taught him good manners and etiquette, has found himself here. The other directors, including the vice chairman, have found it appropriate to not be here, to be able to help us to understand or establish the veracity or otherwise. So when we hear these allegations and then the directors absent themselves, I'm sure you'd understand that they're trying to figure out what really is going on here. It would have been easy for the director to be able to be here and say, listen, those allegations are untrue, but they've chosen to be absent. So we are in a funny place in trying to understand what is happening. Allegations are made, and when you have the opportunity to defend yourself and come and put information on the public record, you absent yourself. You plead the fifth. We have no Fifth Amendment in Trinidad and Tobago, but members have chosen to be absent. But here's what. They're elected to be present at another meeting this afternoon at 2 p.m. I would have loved to chair that meeting. Yeah? Senator Mark, proceed.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would also like to ask Mr. Purmel, see that he was just recently inducted into that arrangement, or brought on board, I should say. Are you aware that there was a recent pre-qualified contractors list issued by the board of directors of EFCL?
May I ask how recent, Senator Mark?
Well, I understand it took place in the last 4 months.
No, I'm not aware.
Mr. Cox, are you aware?
Through the chair, no, I'm not aware of any list, as a matter of fact.
can the company, through you, produce evaluations for all contractors, whether they failed or they didn't succeed? And have all contractors submitted proposals which would have been evaluated? Because we get all kinds of reports in the newspapers where contractors seem to be submitting things on the fly, as the young people would say, on the fly. They get permission, they get approval, and then they submit. That is what the papers are alleging. And again, we need to have clarification on these matters. And maybe, have there been any instances of contractors being on the list but without being evaluated? And you said you don't know about the list. Could I ask you to investigate that for us? Whether it is alleged that there is a recent pre-qualified contractors list that the board has produced. Could you investigate that and maybe report to the chairman on that matter for us, because it is alleged?
I will certainly investigate.
Need to have clarification.
I will certainly investigate, Senator Mark, since as recent as the last board meeting, I am now chair of the tenders committee.
Oh, you are not the chairman? Well, I want to congratulate you.
Just a few days ago, so therefore I will.
Mr. Pumel.
Yeah, that is very, thank you. It seemed like it seems, Mr. Pumel, that the public pressures seem to be having some very important impact, because for you to have been given that assignment, that is a very important advance. I want to congratulate you.
I'm not going there, Senator Mark.
Well, I know. That's why I want to congratulate you. We have noticed also through the chairman that the board tenders committee, and now that you are there, does not, and maybe you will change it, have a representative from the procurement department. And this department is supposed to have the experts as it relates to procurement and the tendering process. And we were trying to understand, why is this so? Why the tenders committee did not have a representative from the procurement department on its committee? Do you know? Well, they have just appointed you, so you may not be aware, but it is a matter that I would like you to investigate. And maybe Mr. Cox, the general manager, could tell us whether this allegation is true, that the tenders committee, before Mr. Pumel was appointed 2 days ago as its new chairman, replacing the old chairman, I think his name is Mr. Francis, if I'm not mistaken, replacing Mr. Francis. Could you tell us, Mr. Cox, or the permanent secretary, whether a representative of the procurement department was a member of the tenders committee before Mr. Pumel was given that important assignment 2 days ago? Would you be in a position to help us on that matter?
Chair, not at this point in time. I know the manager of procurement was supposed to be a member of the committee, but I cannot confirm at the time. At this point in time.
Well, would you be able to supply us?
I would do that. I would do that.
With the records of the last between September of last year to the current period before Mr. Pumel took the chairmanship of that body. Could you supply this committee with the minutes of those tenders committee meetings?
And I would just like to note for the
Thank you.
information of the permanent Secretary, forgive me, I would like to note for the Mrs. Sinaswi Jove and Ms. Phillips, in the submission submitted here by EFCL, they listed the members of the tenders committee at the time, and there's nobody from the procurement department on the tenders committee. So that, it seems a huge omission. You have 4 board members, including the chairman, the general manager, the corporate secretary, and the person in charge of technical services, but nobody from procurement on the tenders committee. So I struggle to know what a tenders committee could work, unless you have the procurement person is an ex officio member. But if you're having a tenders committee, who person in charge of procurement should be on the committee? Because how else can you understand value for money, whether or not what you're receiving bids on is really value for money? So that this is based on the submission provided by EFCL to us. And if this is correct, then this is already a major omission by the company. So I want to thank Senator Mark for flagging that, because it's a significant issue. And this is directly for the address to the line ministry, that you have to engage with the company in discussions. You can't have a tenders committee without somebody who understands procurement which is a particular skill set in and by itself, as a formal member of the committee. I don't think you need 4 board members on the tenders committee. You know, with the greatest respect, I don't think you need 4 board members on a tenders committee. Senator Mark, are you?
Yeah,
I want to give MP Karim, he's been waiting a while.
Yeah, one final question, Mr. Chairman. In your letter, Mr. Cox, dated November the 3rd, based on obvious concerns expressed to you as General Manager and Chief Financial Officer about the goings-on at this entity, would you agree that the tendering process at the EFCL has been manipulated when it comes to the awarding of contracts? And I want to remind you of a sentence in your submission that has led me to ask this question. And I quote on page 1, "The directors of the board disregard proper procurement and tender processes and rules and award contracts to contractors outside of good procurement process." That is why I have asked the question whether that process, tendering process, has been manipulated in an effort to give whoever they wish to give contracts. Not you, the board, based on what you have said. No, you may not want to, as my chairman.
The chairman is about to protect Mr. Cox. The chairman is about to protect Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The chairman is about to protect.
The question you asked, Senator Mark, is whether you're asking him to decide whether it has been manipulated. No, I would respectfully ask you to not ask Mr. Cox that. I would allow you to ask Mr. Cox to verify that, in his opinion, based on his experience as general manager, that he's seen instances where the company's rules and procedures for issuing contracts have been contravened. Whether it's been manipulated is subject to other parties and other places to make that decision. But the company has a particular procedure and process for the issuing of tenders. Have you seen instances where tenders have been, the process has been completed, but it has not followed what you would consider to be the normal accepted process? One word answer would work.
Yeah, from the information from the management team, I was so informed that certain processes were not followed at all times.
That's a significant admission there. I will leave it there because I don't want to put you in any more trouble, Mr. Cox, but I'm here to protect you. Senator Mark, thank you very much. I'm giving the floor to MP Karim.
Chair, thank you very much.
Oh, Mr. Pomel, please, forgive me.
That's quite all right. Could I ask just one question of Senator Mark? Yes. Senator Mark, where is... True you, sir.
The questions are going, you're going the wrong way.
No, I just want.
If you're seeking clarification, forgive me.
No, it wasn't. It was just to get the location or something, that's all. That's all right.
Okay, good. MP Karim, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In view of the startling revelations made by Mr. Cox, I hope you're not leaving. It is very clear that this board of directors has compromised the integrity of the organization and cannot continue. So maybe at 2 o'clock this evening, we will be able to hear about the resignation, the dismissal of this board, because this is a very serious revelation that Mr. Cox has made. He has said to us, and I want to not verbatim, but paraphrase in a sense, that the management team has identified instances of the breach of the protocol for procurement. And the question, and I'm going to ask it when he returns, but I could, if Mr. Pumel could give us the answer, even though that he would have joined the organization lately. The question is, does the EFCL have a fraud policy? And if it has a fraud policy, is it being implemented? To your knowledge.
I am not aware.
Sorry. To answer the question, so far I am not aware that there's a fraud policy. In writing that is. But from what I have seen, I believe that steps are taken so as to avoid certain things taking place, such as what you have referred to.
In terms of the Ministry of Finance and maybe the Ministry of Education, are you aware whether a fraud policy exists at the EFCL and is it being implemented?
Minister, we're not, member, we're not aware, sorry.
Maybe
I'm not aware either, sir.
Well, maybe Mr. Cox, when he returns, might be able to tell us. There are so many questions I want to raise as soon as he comes back. But in the meantime, in a follow-up question to Senator Mark, when he asked about that particular member of the board who willingly, or who knowingly, I should say, but unwillingly, may have withheld disclosing this conflict of interest. It is my view as well, and I don't know if you, in terms of the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Education, would you concur that that really is a serious matter, and therefore, by withholding that information, if perchance other members of the board are aware of that relationship, that he has compromised the integrity of the board, which again substantiates the board not being able to continue as a bona fide.
Yes, member. The Ministry of Finance views conflict of interest as a very serious matter, one which requires serious investigation and the member being brought to answer.
What will be the consequence of finding out that that is in fact so, or being withheld, or if the board knows and does not act on it?
We are the administration, is headed by the Permanent Secretary, can only recommend. The action is up to the corporation sole.
And what is the normal recommendation in a context like that?
Well, we can recommend that the board be reconstituted. Yeah.
Mr. Cox, as you returned, I was asking whether you're aware, I asked other persons on the panel, whether, from your information, whether the EFCL has a fraud policy and whether it is being implemented.
To the Chair, the answer to that is no. We don't have a fraud policy.
And can I ask subsequently to the Ministry of Finance, is it mandatory or is it expected that state companies have a fraud policy in keeping with the performance monitoring manual?
It's not a requirement in the manual, but it is a desirable practice.
Is it encapsulated in the performance monitoring manual and governance of state companies?
No, as far as I'm aware, no.
Okay. Mr. Cox, you would have indicated before about the concern of contractors and their unwillingness, as it were, to do business with the EFCL. Their fear, and I think you used that word, because of the perception of insolvency. Can you give us an idea as to how much monies are owed to contractors and how long have these standing? And if you don't have the information right now, I would have liked to have that in the categories of ECC, primary, secondary, and textbooks. If you have it, we'll be very happy to hear what, in your view, is a ballpark figure of indebtedness to contractors.
Through the chair, I don't have the information readily, but I can give you a ball. I'll have it provided for you in writing, through the chair. Also, as a ball.
I will inject this actually in your submission. It's nobody has the total. Yeah. So if you want a breakout, then we'll have to get it in
I'm asking
writing.
for a breakdown of contractors owed by your various responsibility functions. In addition to that, since you're going to provide it in writing, this might be an easier question to answer. Do you have any lawsuits towards or against the EFCL from contractors for outstanding payment?
The answer is yes. And we have several lawsuits, but I can give you details in writing as to the quantum and to the details, other details.
All right. With respect to the status of the company, does the EFCL receive any revenue sources? Do you have any revenue sources? And if so, what are these revenue sources?
Our main revenue source is through the Ministry of Education with respect to project management fees. The fees are rated, for instance, 5.6% on a project involving old schools construction, I think it's 5.9% on the, sorry. Yeah, sorry. 3.9% on new schools, that's the project management fees, construction. 5.6% on old school where we do renovation. 7.5% for repairs and maintenance, and outfitting and textbook procurement. So our fees are basically through the Ministry of Education.
Recently, in a discussion that took place a while ago, we were hearing about the expediting of payments to contractors. Is this normal, or is it a new phenomenon? And what were the circumstances that would have led to preferential treatment and the payment to a or certain contractors at the expense of those who themselves may be facing insolvency as a result of not being paid what is due to them?
Pricewaterhouse was engaged to conduct an audit, what we term a validation of the accounts payable of EFCL. That was in 2016. The audit was based on outstandings to contractors, consultant, ETAL, as of December 31st, 2015. A note was sent to Cabinet so that Cabinet, requesting that Cabinet authorize EFCL to use an existing fund that we are holding, what we call the Abercrombie Fund. We are holding that, which is a bridging loan that was obtained a couple of years ago to build, ECC, several early childhood care centers. And that cabinet gave approval to redirect or to change the use of that fund to pay contractors. So on the basis of the validation process, we commenced and we made payments to contractors predating 2015.
I'm going again on the newspaper report that Senator Mark would have alluded to. And out of that, I'm asking this question. Is there any truth that the corporate secretary has awarded contracts to contractors?
For clarity, I don't think the word awarded contract is a proper term to use here, in that the acting corporate secretary, the person who signed the letters of award, which was normally, falls in the remit of the general manager or the CEO. But there was no general manager at the time, so the corporate secretary functioned in that capacity. And that is in the public domain.
You spoke about certain issues between members of the board and management. Have you found a situation where the management of the company would have determined that these are the priority projects, and it was incongruent with the list that the board of directors would have come up with? And if so, how did you resolve that situation?
To answer, I cannot recall having faced that sort of situation where the board...
I want to interject because MP Karami has raised an issue about the process by which you come up with the projects to be done. So I think where he's going is trying to... I would like to know, what is the process by which, how do projects arrive on your schedule? Is it that you liaise with the Ministry of Education and they give you a list of projects and say, well, prioritize these projects in this calendar year? What is the process that allows ECC to say, EFCL to say, these are the projects that we are going to pursue in this period? What is the process?
Yes, through the chair. It's through the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education would prioritize projects. We are project managers. In other words, the project don't originate from EFCL. The origination takes place at the level of the Ministry of Education, who would instruct, I think it's safe to use the word instruct EFCL to proceed with particular project in a given priority scale.
And I want to follow on with the same inquiry that MP Karma is going. After receiving the instructions from the Ministry of Education on the listing and how to proceed, has the company in any way altered that listing or that priority?
From my recollection, no, I don't think so.
Okay. I want to wrap up.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether the remit for the EFCL also includes Tobago. But we would have seen in that very article where a school in Tobago was funded by significant sums of money. Could you explain that for us? Of the EFCL's responsibility.
Yes, in fact, EFCL has undertaken a project in Tobago. Whether the remit is limited to Trinidad, I'm not certain at this point in time. As a state enterprise, normally you look at Trinidad and Tobago. But I cannot say clearly that it was limited to Trinidad alone. But the project, in fact, was undertaken with Tobago.
Could you give us some details of that project and what, therefore, would have been the responsibility of the THA in terms of school construction, outfitting, repairs, and so on, vis-a-vis the EFCL?
I'm through the chair. Briefly, the THA, in this case, this particular project, would be acting parallel to the Ministry of Education in terms of being the owner of the project and EFCL being the project managers. So that's the relationship. Instead of the Ministry of Education, issuing instruction or assigning a project to EFCL, we have, for the first time, THA actually, operating in a parallel relationship with EFCL in terms of how we interact with the Ministry of Education.
So who financed Scarborough RC Primary School to the extent of $53.7 million?
That financing will come from the THA.
And it was not from the EFCL?
No, definitely, THA.
Okay. Just a final question. We made mention earlier on, well, two actually, of the Pricewaterhouse investigation with respect to the ICT manager who was suspended. Has that report been submitted? And if so, what's the outcome of that report? Was that person, blamed, found guilty, exonerated? What was the outcome of that investigation? And what's the consequence of it?
That report has not been completed as yet. That happened when? Last week? Friday?
So there is no truth to any newspaper report today that the person has been exonerated?
That would be a shocker to me.
Okay. And my final question, with respect to that article again in the Trinidad Express, with respect to the Barrackpore Viddick Primary School, the contractor was awarded a sum of money for installation and the supply, installation, and commissioning of containerized classroom. Could you tell us how much money we are talking about here that was awarded, that contract, and how many containers, how many classrooms that sum of money would have been allocated and awarded to?
Through the Chair, I don't have the specific details, but I can provide it in writing.
Thank you very much. Okay, the chairman has just one more small question before we before we wind up. Mr. Cox, who is holding the position of, do you have, I note in the document the position of internal auditor is vacant. How long has that position been vacant?
Chairman, the internal auditor resigned in April 12.
April when?
April, I think it's 12th April.
Of this year?
It's in the document, yeah. Yes, 2017.
And what is the plan?
The board, through the HR committee, has indicated that we go out and rehire an internal auditor.
Because you should be aware that according to the state and performance manual, the company is required to submit internal audit reports at 14 days after the end of each quarter.
Yes.
Have you been submitting these reports on time?
The internal auditor was in the process of completing our first report, auditing the IT and the procurement functions.
Well, I will give you an exercise, Mr. Cox. For the past 12 months, we would like you to submit to the committee whether or not, let us know whether or not the auditor has submitted, whoever the auditor was, whether or not they submitted the internal audit reports as required by Investments Division. It is supposed to be submitted 14 days after the end of the quarter, according to this document. It's my little Bible, but it should be the Bible of the entity itself. And the reason for that is that the internal auditor performs key work. Some of the things that have been highlighted this morning, an internal auditor would have picked up and would have flagged to the audit committee. It's a pity that the audit committee members are not here either. They've chosen not to be here. So,
but Chair, if you allow me,
certainly.
For the records, there were no internal audit report submitted to Ministry of Finance to date.
Well, Ministry of Finance, that's untenable. I mean, I understand the challenges with the Investments Division in terms of the bodies, but we can't have an entity through which hundreds of millions of dollars flow every year of taxpayers' money, and there's no internal audit report. At least I give you the comfort that somebody is doing the work. They may be doing the work, but you need, in every system, you need verification. And that's the reason why they submit the report. You see, you can verify independently that, listen, the work has done and they've reported. So I hope that this troubles you enough to take some action, Madam Permanent Secretary.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. All right, I would like to invite now the... Okay, Mr. Senator Mark.
Yes, brief. Mr. Chairman, through you, I would like to ask Mr. Cox to supply in writing, since this board took office, how many projects were awarded to PricewaterhouseCoopers, the exact nature of the project, the sums of monies that were paid during the particular project, if they can submit that to the chairman so we can have an appreciation of what kind of projects this PricewaterhouseCoopers auditing firm have been recruited to address.
Thank you very much. As I begin to wrap up, I would like to invite the official from the EFCL to give us a short closing comment. Mr. Pumel?
Okay, it has certainly been a learning experience. I will be taking it back to the board in terms of what has transpired so far. But I'd also like to probably get an idea as to how soon the many documents, the information to be supplied by Mr. Cox, how soon that is requested, and probably, if you are willing to, how soon you propose to meet again, in other words, if and when.
You will be provided with that shortly. I would like to hear a closing comment from Mrs. Sinaswi Jove. I'm getting good at it.
Today really has been an enlightening session. I have heard things that really causing some concerns, and I will be working with my colleague at the Ministry of Finance to see how we are going to treat with them to try and straighten it out. Certain policies that we thought should be there, we were not aware, so we will look into it further and work together to see how we can work with EFCL to get everything in alignment.
Alignment. I like alignment, Madam Permanent Secretary. Thank you very much. Permanent Secretary Phillips.
We will certainly take the recommendations of the committee on board in terms of the various policies and procedures and alignment. We are working feverishly with respect to the audit of the Central Audit Committee on EFCL. And we thank the committee for inviting us and giving us this opportunity to discuss the workings of the EFCL. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The committee wishes to place on the record that the following persons, again, for the record, couldn't find time to be here. Christopher Braffett, Anthony Biznat, Jeffrey Francis, Indu Sharma, Deputy Chairman Ricardo Vasquez, Dean Burgeon, and Stephen Sablal Singh, substantive members of the board of EFCL, could not find themselves here. The committee wishes to reiterate its disappointment, its despair, its extreme concern that members of the board seem to have gone into hiding, run, but they can't hide. There are serious allegations have been leveled against the company, and they have found it fit to absent themselves. That is something that is an egregious error on their part. And the local parlance, they're getting taps for it. And as the line ministry and the corporation sole representatives, you should take due note. You have appointed a board, and somehow the board wants to be in charge and be responsible for things, but refuses to be accountable. Accountability is a problem we have in Trinidad and Tobago. And unfortunately for Mr. Cox, he's like the proverbial cheese, because Ms. Tamara Francis, Ms. Gillis Noel, Ms. Anisha Rahim, no Mr. Jerome McCarthy could find time to come to support their general manager. So is the management have abandoned the position, and the board is just absolutely amazingly absent when they know that this is a matter in the public domain, and it would have served to be in their interests to be as informed and enlightened as Director Permel, who's come here and withstood and has indicated that he's learned and understood better from being here. Understand this committee. We are here to help, but we can't help if you're absconded from what you're supposed to do. But parties who are in charge of state resources have a responsibility to be accountable. Once you're in charge of state resources of any kind, you have to be accountable. So I applaud Madam Permanent Secretaries and their team for being here, because you understand what that means. Somehow the other, that message has to go across to the names that I've just called, that when they're summoned, they have to appear. Now the committee has a style. We invite you to appear. But we have, as I've read out in the standing orders, we can issue a summons to be delivered by the Marshal of the Parliament. We would not like to go that route. So I'm letting Mr. Permel and all the other members of EFCL who are listening or watching that you will be contacted today with the date for the next hearing. It will be soon. And we're fully expecting that every member of the board and every relevant manager as determined by the acting general manager who needs to be here is here to answer the various questions of this committee. Because the committee has many questions still, many issues remain unresolved, and this unsatisfactory state of affairs at EFCL has to be brought under control. That's what we're shooting for here. We're trying to bring things under control so that when taxpayers' money is assigned to the company, that they do things in a way in which someone can look at it and say it was done properly and people are held accountable. That's all we're trying to do. So I want to thank the members of the media and the viewing audience and the listening audience for being with us this morning. And I will now say that this meeting is suspended. Thank you very much.
Thank you.